Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today. Friends, welcome back to the Ageless Athlete Podcast, where we uncover stories and tease out secrets of badass athletes in a quest to stay ageless. I'm your host, Kush Khandelwal, bringing you the energy from my Mission District bunker in San Francisco. Huge shout out to our listeners. You rock. Today, brace yourself for a very special guest, a dynamo of will and tenacity. Lee Sheftel is 77 and has been crushing it since forever, climbing 514 at 59, conquering the Grand Teton Traverse at 70. Lee's rewriting the book on aging gracefully. But here's the kicker. He's not just a climbing sensation. Lee spills the beans on his secret training sauce, from biohacking his diet to experimenting with performance enhancers. Oh, and did I mention he's a piano virtuoso too? So get ready for a great episode packed with inspiration, perspiration, and a few surprises. Let's roll. And hey, if you're vibing with the energy, share it with a friend who needs a dose of this awesomeness. Hi Lee, it's a pleasure to connect. Quick intros. I am in San Francisco this afternoon. Where are you located?
Carbondale, Colorado.
Excellent. Right in the middle of fantastic rock climbing and the outdoors in the Rockies. Would love to kick off with a quick intro. Where did you grow up? What do you do? How old are you? And what did you have for breakfast today?
So I'll start with the breakfast. I typically don't eat breakfast. I eat, I kind of eat I guess you could call it a brunch because I pretty much adhere to intermittent fasting, keep my weight down. So I don't eat for at least 15 hours after I eat dinner. So that means that I don't start eating until around the earliest I'll ever eat is around 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. I grew up in Long Island, New York, a town called Roslyn. Throughout my teenage years, I was into sports, but I had no idea what climbing was or anything about climbing. I was into football, baseball, pretty much every sport that was available at the time. I did like the outdoors. I went to camp for about 4 years where I did a lot of outdoor activities. My profession wasn't always this, but it has been for about 40, let me think, since 1980. So about 45 years, I've been a tax professional. I do income taxes for a living.
Great. And how old are you, Lee?
I am 77 years old right now.
Great. 77 years young. Thanks for the background. To add to it, what's your background with sports? Where did you begin rock climbing?
Let's see. I would say that I became very attracted to the outdoors almost immediately after I got out of college. So that would have been back in 1968. And so from 1968 until about 1978, I predominantly hiked. Well, hiking, I did some sort of like scrambling mountaineering type of stuff, but nothing with ropes or anything like that. And I got introduced to rock climbing in around 1978. The reason why I got into it actually is very interesting because at my time, my girlfriend at the time, we were taking a 4-month trip in my camper. And we were in Boulder and we decided to climb it climb up the Flatirons, or actually on the side of the Flatirons. And I ended up, just me, but not her. I wandered out on one of the Flatirons. I think it was the first Flatiron. I just wandered out on the face. I don't know why I did that. I just started. Next thing I knew, I was actually in 5th class climbing, and I didn't know how to climb, really. And it was probably, I'm guessing it was about 5'6", 5'7" climbing, and I was terrified. And I thought I was going to die.
If you live in Boulder, that's like a popular, the Flatirons. I think at least one of the scrambles on it is often done free solo style. Like people don't use ropes, and it's like a kind of a fun activity these days.
Well, I noticed some people later that day that were rope climbing. I think they were being guided. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. People use ropes. But anyway, after I managed, obviously, not to die and got off that first Flatiron, I decided that I liked the idea of climbing, but I don't want to ever do that again. So I hired a 18-year-old kid that a friend of mine told me about to teach me. I can't remember his name.
Okay.
It's been too long ago. Anyway, he took me out climbing in Santa Barbara, and he taught me how to tie into a rope and how to climb. I think we did top roping. And at the end of the day, he asked me, so what do I think? I said, I don't know where this has been all my life. So at that point on, I pursued the sport fairly religiously.
Sure. Sounds like there was some fascination, some fear, some intrigue the first time you began the sport, but I think soon after, maybe like the rest of us, became an enduring obsession. I guess 35 odd years later, you're still climbing. I want to talk a little bit about your history with climbing. And one thing I want to point out is you climbed, the lofty grade of 514. I think at the age of 59 or so. So do you think you still might be the oldest person to have climbed this grade? And then also to a non-climber, how would you describe like the 514 grade? Maybe to somebody who understands running or a different sport, how difficult of a grade is 514?
Well, these days, 514 is not that amazing of a grade, because people now for the last 15, 20 years have been just training in gyms. And there were gyms back when I did it when I was 59, but that was 18 years ago. And the training methods were not as sophisticated either. And people weren't starting as young either. So, but 514 is a hard grade. It's hard for most people, for 99.9% of the climbers out there. But there's different types. So probably just like there's different type of races for runners, for example, climbing a particular grade like 514, or any grade for that matter, can be very power oriented, can be really short. I've tried a number of them. Back in New Mexico, I actually got on 514, and it was so short and so powerful that there was no way I could do the moves. There wasn't even, I realized that if I was going to do a 514 or anything, or even 513s, that they're going to have to be endurance oriented, which is what my strength has always been, is endurance climbing, not necessarily power climbing.
For sure. I understand that you also ran quite a bit, or were a runner, so to speak, before you began climbing. Did you also run with the same aplomb?
No.
And then did you continue running?
I entered some competitions, but I've never been very good at it, or very fast anyway. So basically, almost my entire time I was a runner, I did it for being fit and recreational. And I enjoyed running in the mountains. Yeah, but I didn't really compete that much.
Sure. Going back to some of the milestones in climbing that you take some pride in, would love to hear about maybe some things you that brought you, a sense of accomplishment that also took you a lot of hard work.
When I started to really get into climbing, back even when I was in Santa Fe, which has been 25 years since I've been there, and I lived in this house there for 5 years. So starting 30 years ago, I've always had a home lawn. And then when I moved to
Mhm.
Carbondale, the first thing I did was build a climbing wall in my garage. Especially then, including now, there wasn't any training facilities. Actually, back then there weren't any. So
Mhm.
I had to make my own training facility, or I had to go outside and climb. And yes, I put in a lot of hard training and hard work to
Mhm.
accomplish my goals. And I would train specifically to do certain routes in a specific way. Over the years, I have had a couple of coaches.
Having a home facility and indoor climbing wall right in your garage, I would have to concur, can be an absolute game changer. One day, I would love to have one also. Any other accomplishments that you are proud of, Lee, besides obviously sending the grade of 514? I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
Well, there's a lot of routes in rifle that I found to be quite challenging. Actually, probably the hardest effort that I've ever put into a route, mostly because I was not very experienced at the grade at the time. So my first 13D route, at that point, I only done 13C. At that point, I think I had already climbed maybe two 13Cs, maybe three. I can't remember. Those didn't really take me that long to do. Actually, it turns out that in rifle, some of the 13Bs, B as in boy, took me longer than the 13Cs. I've always told that to a lot of people, just probably because of the style
Interesting.
of climbing. But anyway, this first 13D that I tried in rifle or anywhere is called the Bride of Frankenstein. And it's actually fairly short. It's not super long, but it attracted me because I could do all the moves pretty quickly, and the challenge is putting them all together. And the problem that I had with that route is that I tell everybody that I had zero strategy. I really have a strategy. I just started getting on the route and seeing how well they did. So I'm guessing I probably have the world's record for how many times I could one follow the route and still not have done it. So what I was doing is warming up on exactly the same routes. It didn't matter how I felt. It didn't matter what the weather was like. It could be really hot. It could be really cold. It didn't make any difference. I did the exact same warm-ups, and I go to the route, and I tried it 2 or 3 times in a day. Well, I wasn't getting anywhere. I just kept one following the route and not getting anywhere. And finally, it dawned on me that if I ever want to send this route, I need to come up with a strategy. So that's what I did.
Sure.
So what I did is I put up a route in my garage that was similar enough, and I told myself that until I can do this route in my garage, which is pretty hard. It's a hard route. I finally did it. And I said, now I have to do it at least 3 times with only a 5-minute rest in between. And I will not get back on the real route that I'm trying to do on the Bride until I accomplish that. So I finally accomplished that, and I went back on the route. And the second day I got back on the route, I did it. And I learned that I need to have a strategy.
Sure. Your replica training paid off.
Yeah. Well, so I also did a similar strategy. I had a different strategy for, I mean, some people think this route is 14A also in rifle. I mean, a lot of these routes in rifle that are rated, a lot of people think they're probably somewhere else in the world be 14A anyway. But the hardest route I ever did.
Isn't rifle like known as the land of 13Ds? You know, that these routes that should have been upgraded
Yeah.
to 14A are sandbagged
Yeah.
and are stuck at that 13D grade.
That's 13D, and that's the hardest route I have done in rifle.
Yeah, no, I can see that you are a strategist. And I think with climbing, you know, people are famously lackadaisical about their approach. And people will say, hey, you know, I'm just going to get on this route and I will try it until I send it. But I think you were the contrarian, which is, hey, this is the amount of time I'm going to give myself. And I'm going to prepare myself with all of this training so that when I actually get back on this route, I actually have a reasonable chance of meeting my objective.
Well, I felt completely different after that training that I did, getting more power, because this one crux that I had a hard time with. On the first 7 sessions or so, I'd get on that route. I'd get up to the crux, and even on the dog, maybe I could do that move 1 out of 3 times. That's not a good, because considering that it's probably mid 513 just to get to that move, and there's a really great rest right before it. So I realized that I upped my power. But when I got back on the route after training for it, I knew right away I can do this route, because it felt completely different.
Wow. Yeah. The before and after effect, pre-training to post-training. That's great. Yeah, that's great summation. I'm curious, Lee. You know, you were embarking to try these hard routes, and you know, you have some of these first to your name. Were there naysayers? I'm sure there were. You know, there were probably people who thought that, you know, you could not be climbing this hard, or maybe there wasn't actually a precedent of people in their 50s, you know, sending 13s and 514s. So wondering if there was some kind of like belief you had, some conviction that you know, I don't care what other people are saying, or if there isn't like a precedent here. I believe in myself, and I know that I can achieve some of these climbing goals, even if they haven't been done before.
About my age?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I was a late starter. I didn't even start climbing until I was 33 years old. So, and I didn't really think about age until I got close to 50. So probably around your age. And I was like, okay, here I am. I'm getting close to 50. I wonder if all of a sudden I'm not going to be able to climb hard anymore. So those thoughts did occur to me. At the time, I didn't have anybody to look up to that was older than me, that was climbing as hard as I was climbing. But I decided that, well, why don't I just not think about my age? Who knows what's possible? Let's see what happens. Well, as soon as I turned 50 and into my 50s, I noticed that, probably because I didn't start until I was 33, and then I hadn't really trained very much. I just climbed. So I was not a sport climber until I was about, oh God, let me think. That was like the mid 80s. So, so I'd only been climbing for about 7 years or 8 years when I started. So I was only 41. Before that, I was doing nothing but trad climbing. So, you know, I did a lot of trad climbing. Maybe what might have helped me in the future for sport climbing is that when I went trad climbing, you know, the conventional wisdom was that you don't fall.
Yep.
Especially on bolts, because back then the bolts were not reliable. There were star drills, there were shitty bolts. And so when sport climbing came around, let's make sure that it didn't fall whenever I was trad climbing. I did some pretty big trad climbs. Climbed El Cap. I've done the west face of El Cap. I climbed the Rostrum. I climbed Astroman. Did all these classical long trad climbs.
Yeah.
So I built up a lot of endurance.
Yeah.
And then when I first started sport climbing, I was afraid to fall even on obviously the same poles. And my friend, a really good friend of mine, used to make fun of me all the time. He used to go, I used to say, well, I fell there. And he go, no, you didn't. I've never seen you fall, Lee. You just take. And so I would battle the pump as hard as I could. And I think that helped me build endurance. And then finally I got over obviously the fear of falling on bolts. And so back in the mid 80s, late 80s, that's when I really got into sport climbing, because it also fit my lifestyle better. Because that's when I started my business, this that I have now, that I still do. Texas. It required me to be around, and I couldn't go traveling all over the place and doing these trad climbs and I wanted to build up my business. So sport climbing came along and that just fit my lifestyle at that time.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run, or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
Lee, it's funny. You started trad and went to sport. I started climbing sport back in the East Coast. At the New River Gorge and the Red River Gorge. So when I came to,
I love the Red River Gorge. I have been to the Red River Gorge at least 15 times.
Sure, no, I don't think anybody, even the most dyed in the wool trad climbers, will go to the Red and not love the Red. It's just it's such a playground. So I started climbing, and when I came to California, I was maybe extremely stoked on sport climbing, and then came to San Francisco, and the best kind of climbing was trad. So I was a reluctant trad climber, and I've done some of the routes that you just mentioned. And I had the opposite problem where I got so used to falling on bolts that when I got to trad, I had a hard time not taking the same approach, which is like I would take falls on gear. As a new learner, I think that sometimes terrified my partners, where instead of hanging on
you.
Sorry?
Did you ever have any gear pull on you?
I have, when I first started, I did have a big fall before I even learned. Before I made some really bad Gumby mistakes. Mm-hmm. Before I even learned to place gear properly, I did have a kind of a dramatic accident, which I came out fairly unscathed. Once that happened, I went back to the books and learned how to basically climb trad in a safe, proper way. And since then, I don't think I've really had any gear come off. And I think I also became a little bit more careful about not always, whipping on gear. But I don't think I have ever had any significant gear. But coming back to you, just continuing on the climbing trajectory. So you were climbing maybe at your physical best, let's say upper 50s, maybe. Now, over the last, let's say, 2 decades and leading up to now, so today, so to speak, what's your level of climbing, and how do you train?
Okay, so my level of climbing right now is none. And the reason for that is because, as a lot of people that I know me, about little over 2 months ago, I needed to have major back surgery.
Oh,
So I am still in the recovery process. It's been, let me see, what is today is the 19th. So I had November 7th, I had my surgery. So I'm about almost 2.5 months out. I have a follow-up in about 2.5 weeks with
okay.
surgeon's office. And at that point,
Okay.
I'm hoping that they'll give me the go-ahead to start training again for climbing. Back on
Okay.
the age thing, to give you a little more of a history, is that when I thought I was going to get weaker at 50, and right at that time period, that's when I moved up here, up to Carbondale. Actually, a couple of years after that, I think I was 53. And I noticed that I was getting stronger, not weaker, because I started to train more methodically, and which I had never really done that much. And so I was training more methodically, training power, campus sporting, stuff like that. And I noticed I was getting stronger and better. So a lot of it also has to do with getting better too. So I think that one thing I realized as I got older, and like I told you, I started changing my strategy. And I think an advantage of older athletes, depending on who you are. I mean, some people figure this out when they're in 20 years old, but most of the time not. Is that you learn more about conserving energy. You learn more about training, what works for you, which doesn't work for you. You will work on your technique. You have more patience on a route in terms of get out. Whereas typically when you're younger, you just go for it, and you don't necessarily have a training method or anything. So I think that's an advantage of being older. But at any rate, I can, for whatever reason, I got better and stronger in my 50s. And so I would say I probably peaked at 58, 59, 60. I was climbing my hardest.
Sure.
But then
Sure.
at 60 years old or so, that was 2006 and 7. So I guess I was 60. I had both my hips replaced.
Oh,
I had
wow.
severe hip arthritis. And so I didn't climb very much for quite a while. Well, actually, I did. They were about 7 months apart. So the first hip surgery, it was climbing season, and I obviously I couldn't climb for a few months. And the second hip, it was ski season. So again, I couldn't ski until maybe 2 months later. But after that hip replacement, I got back at 60. At that point, I was 61 or 62. I did a couple 13Cs after the hip surgery. So that's the highest grade I've done after my hip surgeries. But I did notice at 65 that I wasn't quite as strong as I used to be. I was still able to climb up until say 65. I was still climbing mid 513s, but it took me longer to do them.
Sure.
And then when I hit 70, that was 7 years ago, I had to have my first back surgery. And after that,
Sure.
I don't believe, I think I have not broken back into 513 again after 70. So last summer, when I was very incapacitated because of I had spinal stenosis, severe nerve pain shooting down my legs, I couldn't even walk anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I got to the point where I couldn't climb anymore. That's when I decided I needed to have surgery. But at that point, even though I was fairly compromised, I was still climbing 512. So that was my level when I quit. And my plan right now is if I can get back into it again, I'm hoping to be able to climb some 512s again. I don't know about climbing harder than that. But again, my attitude is anything's possible. So I'm not going to, age is just a number. If you tie yourself to your age, then, you're actually defeating yourself.
Certainly.
The other thing I wanted to mention that I feel like, which is not climbing per se, is I decided for my 70th birthday, I was going, I think, who inspired me at the time was Alex Honnold and, what's his name? I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, Alex and And this other guy who's very famous, his name is just escaping me right now.
A sport climber or track climber or Adam Ondra,
No,
maybe, or
American, Tommy Caldwell. Tommy and Alex went down somewhere in South America and did the first traverse of a very serious traverse.
the Fitz Traverse in Patagonia. I
And
think.
so that inspired me not to do that. But,
Mm.
and I also had read an article about the Tetons and the Teton Traverse. So I decided that for my 70th birthday, my present to myself was going to be I was going to train the year before to be able to do the Teton Traverse. So in August of, 7 years ago now, I did the Teton Traverse. And according to the Rangers, I'm the oldest guy to have done that. Nobody has done my age.
Yeah.
And it was harder in a way that I thought it would be. Well, it was very exposed. And you can't rope up for some of these pitches. We roped up for some of it. I went with this guy that I knew who used to be a guide up there, and we did it together. And it was super exciting to be able to do it.
Sure. That's impressive. You did many things right, Lee. Obviously, you were embracing cutting edge training methods. You were quite strategic. You were a planner with your climbing. Any things you think you could have done differently to make for even better outcomes? Maybe it could be with your training, it could be with your diet, perhaps, or anything else with your lifestyle that could have yet been improved upon.
Over what I've already been doing.
Like if you were to go back, let's say 20 years, 25 years, and tell your younger self that, hey, why don't you start doing ABC or stop doing XYZ, what would that have looked like?
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Well, okay, like I said, I didn't really have much of a strategy up until I was about 53 or 54 years old. I just threw myself at roots. And so, yeah, I think what I would do differently now is I would have trained more specifically on my wall in my house. I would have probably built a canvas board for myself because I think that that's very beneficial, as well as hang boards. But, even then when they were around, I didn't necessarily use them very much. I also did some stupid things. I actually injured myself pretty badly, my finger injury from overuse, because this was before hang boards. I used to hang from my fingers on door jambs with weights hanging from me, and my fingers started hurting.
Right.
And I thought that was a good thing. My fingers were hurting. Well, and then I took tons of ibuprofen on a climbing trip. That was a 2-week climbing trip so that I could get through it. And I just figured, well, no big deal. I'll probably be sore after the climbing trip, but I'll probably be fine in a couple of weeks. Well, I was probably wrong about that. I was very injured. It took me 6 months for my fingers to heal. And that was quite a while ago. I think there's one route at rifle that I wished I would have stuck with. I know that I done it, and I gave up on it. And I wouldn't say I was close to doing it, but I was doing really well on it. But there was, if there's one thing that always discouraged me, it was power moves. So if I got shut down on a power move, and I couldn't do it and I couldn't figure it out. And even after I trained for it, I would kind of give up on it. I noticed that there were other people who climb similar to me, not necessarily they're necessarily better or worse or anything. They just stick with it. They just figure it out and continue to work on the crux. And I remember that, you know who Emily Harrington is, right?
Yes.
So she was working on this one-rooted rifle, and she worked on it for quite a while, and she had worked it out really, really well, but she could never get through the boulder problem at the bottom, and neither could I. I had already given up on the route a few years before, and she kept working on it, training for it. She wanted to do the route, and she eventually did it. And so that's one thing. Even though I have a lot of patience, I think I should have had more patience when it came to powerful routes.
Got it. Well, sure. Yeah. You were probably still maybe in the 90th percentile when it came to patience and persistence, but there is always room for more, for working harder and being more persistent.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, so diet-wise, I've always been very strict about my diet. So I don't know if I would do anything different.
I was about to actually ask you to kind of talk about some things ancillary to the actual climbing that have helped you or hurt you. And I wanted to ask about your diet, what's worked, what's not worked, and then also if you supplement your diet with other things.
I do, and I have. So I have experimented over the years with all different types of diets. So here's my thing about diet. For one thing, one diet does not fit everybody. Everybody has different genetics, different things that work for them and work don't. So the biggest thing about diet is to figure out what works for you. I've had some people say that if they eat vegan, for example, they just feel low energy all the time. And I don't know whether that's psychological or whether it's genetic or whether it's true, you know, or what it is. All I know is for me, at one point I was a strict food vegan.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's
For those of us who don't know, could you describe that?
that's the most radical diet I've ever been on. Is raw food vegan for 4 years. I ate no cooked food, nothing but nuts, seeds, veggies, salads, whatever. And then at one point, I was just a vegetarian. I didn't want to eat meat. Then I became a pescatarian and ate fish. Then I married a woman who's very much a meat eater. And then eventually I just started eating meat. And so personal experience with diet is as long as you eat well, for me anyway, it doesn't make any difference. I feel like my energy level is fine no matter what I eat, as long as I don't eat garbage or overeat. So I also eat, I wouldn't say 100% organic, but as much as I can. I eat organic as much as possible. Fruits, veggies, meat. The meat that I eat is I will not eat inorganic meat. I just won't do it. Except on very rare occasions, you know, you go out to dinner somewhere at a restaurant. I just find that diet-wise, I just make sure I eat really well. Everybody's different again. So like when I'm climbing, for example, some people like to eat like a lunch. They like to eat a sandwich.
Yeah.
And they eat a big lunch.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, well, Lee, you're doing all these climbing. Don't you feel like you should eat? No. I eat a little bit. I'll eat a bar or a small bowl of fruit or something like that. I feel like if I eat a big meal or any kind of normal lunch, like a sandwich or something, I can't even climb anymore. I can't climb hard. It just bogs me.
Yeah.
But other people are different. So I wouldn't say that one thing.
Yeah. No, I think I'm the same way. I like to graze when I'm climbing.
Right.
And, it's just like you like little snacks through the day. And I know that if I bring a packed lunch, and even if I tell myself that I'm going to only eat portions at a time, I don't have any self-control. So if I bring a, like burrito or a sandwich with me, I'm probably going to scarf scarf through the whole thing, and then I'll feel like a slug for the next few hours. So I think a lot of us would do well to subscribe by that. Hey, eat a healthy breakfast before you go climbing, and then just eat enough to have sufficient energy outputs through the climbing day, and then one can replenish.
Well, one thing I do that is pretty much routine that I do is, like I told you, I don't really eat much in the morning. And eventually when I do eat, I make a smoothie. So, and I put stuff in my smoothie. So we get to the supplementation stuff. I put protein powder in my smoothie.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm pretty much convinced that, we need to eat protein.
Do you take like whey or vegan pea protein?
I've been on using pea protein for now a couple of years. Before that, I was doing whey protein, and I just decided that I like pea protein better. And my smoothies are just fruit, some yogurt, orange juice, frozen blueberries, and pineapple. That's it. And then I add some other powders, glutamine for recovery. I don't know how well that stuff works, really. So I've done a lot of experimentation with some more serious stuff. I didn't find that they did anything for me.
When you said serious stuff, what is some of that stuff?
Testosterone.
Oh.
So not only oral, but I've actually, for a brief period of time, I was, this one health professional was convincing me that I should do injectable testosterone.
Why do you think they advised? Was it like a health condition or performance goals?
Supposedly, according to inject yourself with testosterone when you get older, it keeps a lot of things going stronger, your libido, whatever.
Oh.
But the only thing that I noticed, which are two bad things, nothing good, by the way, I didn't get any stronger. I was using it for a couple of years. My wife told me that I got angrier, which was not pleasant for her. And the other thing that happened, which is even worse, is that my PSA levels.
Oh, the prostate.
Antigen is what that stands for. Prostate
Got it.
antigen. So your PSA levels, which means you're supposed to be typically under level of 4, and I went up at one point to a level of 9. And I had to go to a urologist, and the urologist was telling me that I can't remember what he told me I needed to do, but at the time I was thinking, well, maybe it's the testosterone. So I stopped doing the testosterone, and this has already been like a number of years ago.
Sure.
And my PSA levels dropped all the way back down to normal.
Oh, wow. So the testosterone contributed to the PSA level rise.
Yeah. I also at one point tried some HGH, human growth hormone.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that was, isn't that like a banned substance or?
Well, it's banned for competition athletes, but you can get a prescription for it, probably from somebody. Also, some people smuggle it in from South America or whatever. I don't know where they get it, but they told me that the amount that I was taking was not strong enough to really do anything, and it's very expensive. So injectable testosterone is not that expensive. Sure. HGH is very expensive. So anyway, I tried that. The other thing I've tried, with a lot of people use, again, I don't find that it does anything for me. Matter of fact, it has a negative effect. Some people swear by it, which is creatine.
Okay.
And so I tried that, and I find it had a negative effect. So a lot of these performance-enhancing drugs, I don't find they do much of anything. So I just stopped taking.
Creatine seems to be widely embraced these days. Actually, I take creatine sometimes. I used to lift, but it's been a long time. Then I used to take more creatine, and now I take creatine now. And I do know that I get slightly more ripped when I take creatine, but then I stop taking it. And I just, I think all of that water weight, it just kind of drains back down. So I can't really say if it helps performance with climbing much.
Yeah, see, I can't really say any of that stuff that I've taken over the years helps my performance. The only thing I can say that really helps when I keep my weight down. I didn't have much of a weight problem, but I do now because after the surgery screwed up my appetite and I started eating like I'm not doing it now, but I was just eating all kinds of stuff that overdoing it. It was good food, but just overdoing it. Probably put on about 10 pounds. And anyway, I
Okay.
have found that over the years that when I lose weight, even 3 or 4 pounds, I can feel the difference in my climbing.
Sure. Yeah, that's 4 pounds less that you have to carry up with you. That makes a difference. Moving on, Lee, you have dedicated, the last several decades to climbing and then also training and fine tuning your performance. You also maybe move to a place which allows you to climb very consistently. That kind of dedication, doesn't come without sacrifice. Anything that comes to mind where, you made sacrifices to allow you to pursue your goals?
I think that about 10 or 15 years ago and before that, I didn't put my energy into fostering or growing my personal relationships with some of my relatives, some of my friends, etc. But then about 10, 15 years ago or so, I changed. I was more interested in spending more time with family, with friends, some other pursuits too.
Yes, spending time with family and with close relations can be enormously satisfying. I believe you are a talented pianist. Is that one of those things that you've gotten back into?
Yeah, I play a lot of piano. I have a grand piano in my home. I practice religiously. So again, I approach the piano like I do climbing. I'm pretty goal oriented, probably why
Yeah,
I'm somewhat successful in in the things that I pursue. I just apply myself in however way I can. I have a piano instructor. So when I try, and again, as usual, people have asked me this. I have a piano group of friends that I hang out with. And one of them recently asked me, like, Lee, why do you always pick these really ridiculously hard pieces? I go, well, I guess because I'm goal oriented. I mean, I say, why can't I play like the professionals? I have compromised hands. I've got arthritis in my fingers.
okay.
I've got a
Okay.
condition which I'm thinking about right now because of my back surgery. I don't want to deal with it, but I have a condition called Dupuytren's in my hands, which causes one of my fingers to curl in, which is not very good for playing piano, but I work around it.
Sure.
Yeah, I like the challenge of playing really hard pieces. I got really bad elbow tendonitis for a while, and everybody was giving me
Sure.
all these methods for trying to get rid of it,
Yeah.
using rubber bands and using various physical therapy type things, and nothing really worked. And then I got a grand piano, and I noticed after playing for about a month, the elbow tendonitis went away. And I was like, wait, how did that happen? You think about it, a piano, you're doing antagonistic movements all the time. You're picking up your fingers. And you play piano, and was really into it. I'd practice for an hour to 2 hours a day. And then I noticed after a month that my elbow tendonitis went away. And ever since, it never came back.
That's crazy. Let's say very, very cutting edge left field finger rehab exercise. Lee, in the last several years, has there been any kind of new belief or behavior that has, or habit that has improved your life? Anything outside of what we've talked about already?
I can't say that I've mastered it or anything, but I think I'm learning is the ideology of acceptance. I have to accept certain things. Part of me, of course, as we discussed, is that age is just a number. You never know how well you can do if you don't really apply yourself. But sometimes you just have to accept. I have to accept that at this point in my climbing career, for example, I'm never going to climb a 514 again. Now, I wouldn't rule it out, but I would say it's ruled out. I have to accept certain things. There's a fine line between acceptance, where you are, but at the same time, non-acceptance. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I get it. It's acceptance, but you're not resigned to it. You will accept the outcome, but you will keep fighting against it.
Right, but at some point, you can't fight to the point where you're going to hurt yourself. either
True.
mentally or physically. I've been working on that. But also, the
Got
other
it.
thing that I'd say that I've done now that I think about it, up until I would say maybe like you're probably right, in the last 7 years, 8 years, something like that, maybe 10, I focused more on flexibility. Physical therapy, I mean, I used to just like, I don't need to stretch that much. I'm fine. No, I'm not fine. Flexibility is important. I work with a physical trainer, not just physical therapy, but I have a woman here who has who's a dear friend of mine, and she has an athletic training facility. And over the years, I've been working with her. She's a physical trainer. I've realized that a lot of people that get older realize that they're losing some flexibility, or maybe they need to put more energy into their ability to bend, to move more efficiently.
I am doing that now, like mobility training and all the physio. And honestly, it became non-optional where simple movements, which one took for granted, even 10 years ago in my mid 30s, early 30s, were not that simple anymore.
Mhm.
I think all of us should be doing mobility work. And the sooner we do it, the better. And seeking out specialists who actually can analyze our movements, our anatomy, and prescribe a plan to work on our weakest links. Badass. Never too late to start mobility. I keep telling my mom that. My mom is a couple of years shy of you, and I'm like, Mom, if you don't do these mobility things now,
Mhm.
they're going to be limiting your lifestyle very soon. Whether it's climbing goals or it's just simple lifestyle goals. I think mobility and physiotherapy is so critical to maintaining our quality of life. We're nearing the end of our time. Just some fun questions. What's the best gift that you have received and the best gift that you have given?
I don't know if it's a gift, but I think the best gift I've received is my spouse, my wife. For many, many years, I felt like I never really met a woman who I really wanted to spend that much time with. And when I met her, it just clicked. And I think that's a gift from the world. The best gift I've ever given, I think, was, at least most people have told me, that my mom is no longer with us, but taking care of my mom when she needed me. I moved her up here with me. I
Okay.
built an add-on apartment for her on my house. That was my gift to her, to live with me. I took care of her for a year and a half.
Life-changing gift. Are you like a book reader? Watch TV or things on the internet? If you read books, curious, any good book that you have read recently or are reading?
Up until about, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, or maybe 15, I didn't read hardly any books or anything. I was addicted to doing crossword puzzles, and I would read Climbing Magazine, Rock and Ice Magazine, more or less keep up with politics. And then starting at about 15 years ago, I started reading. I've been an avid reader ever since. And so I read a lot of books.
Okay. Any good book you would recommend to the listeners?
I'm attracted to nonfiction and political books, or other books that are real. I don't like fiction particularly, unless it's historical novels or something like that. So one very interesting book that I just read, which is a brand new book pretty much that came out, was a book called Oath and Honor by Liz Cheney.
Oh, I heard about that book. Yes, Liz Cheney's.
And she was right there in the insurrection on January. And what she has to say, it's a remarkable book. So if you're into that sort of thing, I would highly recommend that book. The other book that I read recently that was recommended to me, which has nothing to do with politics, and actually it was Michael Kennedy. You know who Michael Kennedy is?
I think so.
So anyway, Michael lives here, used to own Climbing Magazine years ago. Anyway, he lives here. He's a good friend of mine. He recommended the book that Katie Brown wrote.
Yeah, I didn't read the book, but I remember hearing Katie Brown. It talks about her like Christian upbringing and all those things.
The big thing she talks about is the relationship she had with her mother and climbing, and how badly she felt about herself and how conflicted she was during her upbringing, which she felt was very unhealthy. And what's interesting about the book is she really, really bears her soul in this book. And I have met her once, and other people that have have met her said the same thing, that she's very shy. She doesn't feel comfortable talking much about her life in public.
Yeah.
Yet she felt extremely comfortable talking about herself in depth book. And so I read that about a month ago, and that was a very, very interesting book.
I think when I first heard about that book, made a mental note, and thanks for the reminder. Yeah, Liz Cheney's book and Katie Brown's book. I mean, Katie Brown, I remember when I first went to the Red, Katie Brown was famous because she had done like the youngest FA of youngest onside of a 514 as a female, or the only onside, which then got downgraded. But I think, yeah, she was the only female to have ever onside at that grade.
Omaha Beach is the route. We worked on that route a little bit at the Motherlode.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is that the weather was not conducive, and I felt like I didn't want to spend my entire vacation trying to do this one route that was far away from where I live.
Sure.
But I'm actually astounded that she onside that route.
Yeah. And Lee, final question.
Yeah.
If there was a gigantic billboard where you could add any message that you wanted, what would you say on that message for others?
Okay, well, this is getting to be a little bit political, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Say whatever you want.
Our home is in danger.
Home is in danger.
The earth.
Okay. The earth is in danger. Okay.
It's actually, the earth is not in danger. We're in danger. It's a book about why civilizations fail.
Okay. I think I might have read that book. It's a bit of a heavy book.
Yeah,
it's a long book.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I read that a decade ago.
Collapse, I think. Is that the name of the book? I think it's Collapse. So it's all about how cultures collapse and why they collapse.
Yeah.
The book outlines 5 reasons. And almost all cultures, if you violate like 3 of those reasons or more, you will not prevail. However, I would say the message on the billboard would have to be something to the effect of, we need to support leaders. We need to support things and changing our lives however we can do that will accept the science of global climate change.
Sure. Lee, it's been a fantastic conversation. I know the weekend is calling. I don't want to keep you any longer, but thanks so much for coming on today. And, you inspire us. You inspire me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
As we wrap up this awe-inspiring episode with Lee, I can't predict if he will conquer another 514. But one thing's for sure, he'll keep setting those sky-high goals and crafting plans with grit and determination. Age or injuries, these are just numbers to Lee. He stays endlessly curious, going climbing with the gusto of a teenager, all while juggling other hobbies that feed his thirst for progress. Reflecting on Lee's journey, I see a mirror image of myself. Beyond the sheer thrill of pushing my limits in climbing, there is a yearning for that elusive state of flow and constant growth. I often don't like to try hard, but when I find that perfect activity and give it my best, the rewards are nothing short of astonishing and deeply satisfying. Huge thanks for tuning in, friends. Share the ageless vibes with a buddy. And until our next adventure together, stay ageless, stay adventurous.
Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week.
And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.